Thank you. Well, I almost said good morning. It just feels like this morning was never ending. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us and welcome to the Juvenile Justice Committee of the Youth Development Council meeting. Molly Rogers, the chair, will be joining us shortly. I see Christina is here. Hey, Christina, would you like to start the meeting while Molly is trying to join us? Or am I putting you on the spot? Should I just try to keep asking?
Yeah, Anya, if you could just go ahead.
Okay. Sorry. I'm so used to relying on you. Oh, here's Christina. She'll take care. Anyway, I know, my bad. So I will ask Joy to check who is here as a roll call. It's just kind of weird to do a roll call of subcommittee members, but still kind of need to just know who is here representing the Juvenile Justice Committee. And I can see we have a few guests. So dear guests, would you mind putting your name and affiliation into the chat, please? This way it will help us keep track of who was present today. Thank you. Why don't, I don't know. So anyway, I'm obviously not Molly. Molly will be here in a minute. So for those of you who I guess, new guests, I see some names that I don't recognize. So I'm Anya Sikin. I'm the Juvenile Justice Specialist and Prevention and Justice Manager for the Youth Development Division. And I'm like the staff to this committee. And why don't we let Joy call the committee members' names out, please, and see who is here.
Sure, Anya. So I'm going to call out the YDC JJC members, and you just let me know if you're present. So first on the list is Andy Leonard. Next is Tabitha Lewis. And Adrian Livingstone.
Here.
Okay. Next is Christina McMahon.
Hi, right here.
Okay. Jeff Parker. Molly Rogers. We'll just give her a few minutes and then I'll check her in. Karen Spencer.
Sure, I think that's it for the Juvenile Justice Committee. I think Kiwi is also on.
Okay. Yeah, so that's
Sam. It's just like I think we were just calling for a little more members than we usually have at this committee.
Okay. All right. And Sam. All right.
Thank you. So I wanted to talk with you today about the 23-25, believe it or not, JCP planning guidelines and the timeline that we will be suggesting to the YDC. So it's no secret that our last planning process was a bit of a challenge, both for us internally and certainly for the field. We were not super clear in our guidelines and the timeline seemed a little off. So my hope is that we will avoid all those mistakes, or at least as many as we can this time around. And I don't have a draft. I just wanted to have a conversation about and get a sense like where we're going with that and how you want to proceed. Those of you who've been involved in the JCP planning process, and I know our favorite guest, Tori Lynn, is here, who's been involved in that process for multiple years. And I'm like looking at you, Tori, now because you know you're my second favorite person to look at after Christina to rely on. And don't say to Molly because she's like number one first plus. Anyway, so the idea, and I'm looking at you too, and I know because to help me remember. Over the years, and I've been involved in this planning process since, I want to say 2004, and I started as in a different role, but I was responsible for, I was the key person for the planning on behalf of the agency since 2010. So over the years, we've had some different approaches to how we go about JCP planning and guidelines and so forth. So sometimes initially there would be some large community involvement and meetings held, and at that time it was commission staff, and we had a few more people working on JCP, participate in community meetings and gatherings. So there was a little more staff support on behalf of from the agency. We also contracted with Joe Christie, if you recall, the former juvenile department director in Washington County. So we had a lot of staff support, at least we tried to provide as much as we could. But the process was quite lengthy, but also we were able to at least put some help out. Now, even while Joe Christie was working with us, at some point it was sort of felt that, you know, there's no need to go through huge detailed planning process every biennium. So what we did, we had like a full planning process during one biennium, and then the next biennium we would ask for either revisions to the plan if people were proposing different type of services, if previous biennium didn't quite work out for them, or they could just say, well, we'll continue doing the same, and this is our revised budget if the allocation changed. So that's kind of how we've been doing these things. So my question to the committee is, last biennium, we've gone through quite an extensive planning process. We asked communities to do so. And we had some specific work dedicated to what is known now as question 6, which is basically looking at racial and ethnic composition of your community and telling how you're proposing to address the needs of minority populations when they exist. And then we had some technical assistance provided, given not at the perfect timing, but eventually to help people do it. So as a result, those communities who were asked to make some amendments to the initially submitted plans made such changes, resend them to us, and all of them were approved by the council. So it took longer in preparation for the current biennium to get where we are now. So first question, do we want to do the same thing for the next biennium? Or given that we've learned quite a bit, and we also, the community spent quite a bit of time working on those guidelines, do we give an option of, okay, you can either continue doing what you're doing now, and then you will just tell us we are not making any amendments to the plan, or if things have changed, you know, life changes. Obviously, you don't have to stick with the same thing that kind of worked for you 10 years ago, shouldn't be expected to work again. Then we will ask them to submit a revised plan, given the changes in the community. So that's kind of like question number 1. Is that okay to have this approach for the planning? Let's talk about question number 1, and then we'll get to what the timeline might be. Christina, please.
Anya, I just want to clarify when you say, so I'll use my own county as an example. We use our prevention funding to fund our diversion program that's in 11 cities and towns. We have done that historically. way before I got here. So if we were not going to change that, if that's what we want to continue to use the funding for, you're saying we could do an abbreviated kind of an update and basically reference what we already provided during this biennium with some updated opportunities for an abbreviated update. Is that what you're proposing? Okay, but my question then is, going to the next part of what I heard you say was, if we said, you know what, we want to do something different, we're going to start a mentoring program, we're not going to have diversion anymore. By the way, that's never going to happen. But not the mentoring, I'm talking about the diversion. We will always have diversion. But if we wanted to do that, would we have to then submit a new plan using all the same questions and the format of what we just did and went through all the craziness about?
Well, I hope the craziness is not part of the recipe, but you'll probably have to answer more questions. But that, again, that's the question number 2. If you're making changes, what description of changes will we be needing? So in the past, when we had a revised plan submission, there would be, first you have to explain what has changed in the community that is requiring some kind of adjustments to what the service that you need. Second, and you will need to get a community buy-in for that. So for instance, if Clackamas County decides that we don't want to do diversion panels anymore, we'll have to get community input like you would through a regular planning process for JCP, right? And they have to give you feedback whether it's okay with them to make the change. And then it will need to get approved by LIPSIC, you know, and the whole thing. So basically you will have to answer all these questions if you are starting a new planning process.
Yeah.
But if you want to keep what you do, we would still ask you to show us that what you're keeping is working for you. So it's kind of abbreviated version of that. Does it make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. I just think there were some, I mean, there was a lot of time and energy spent talking about the last go round, and there were some issues with question 6, came back, tried to do that guide, you know, that we did the last spring when people had an opportunity to resubmit. And I think the guide, or whatever we want to call that document, was an improvement, but I still think it was not shocking. It was very pleasantly surprising to me when I was reading the redos that I was assigned to. I think I had 6 I looked at. It made me wonder, are we not asking the questions in a way that is as simple as possible to get people to really share what they were doing? Because some people who had been unsatisfactory, whatever it was, when they had to resubmit and they started telling about what they were doing, I was blown away by some of the things going on, especially in some of these smaller frontier counties that we had no idea was going on. You know, so I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud about that. And then the other issue is, and I'm not going to name any names, there were some counties that got, you know, exemplary, outstanding, whatever the term was. And they never addressed the question about serving. You know, I totally get question 6 and the focus on racial and ethnic diversity and equity. I'm not arguing in any way, shape, or form against that. But we had another very intentional question about serving LGBTQ plus youth. And frankly, I saw some counties that were rated as being exemplary, or whatever the term was, who didn't even address it. And I'm not saying everybody should be, you know, have a master plan, but it was completely silent. And if we're talking about really making sure that all youth are having opportunities at the county level, then we should be holistic in the way that we're approaching that. So I'm just bringing that up. I saw that as a weakness in the planning process, that I don't think it's wrong, or I'm not trying to say that we shouldn't have done what was done. I don't think it was wrong to focus on racial equity and the services being culturally responsive. I'm not arguing against that in any way, shape, or form, but it feels like that was the only focus, and some other things that go on at the county level that also needed attention kind of got lost in the shuffle a bit. That's just my opinion.
No, I totally hear you. So I wonder, Joy, do you have a power to make me a presenter? Or I don't want to present, I just want to show you the guidelines from the current biennium.
Yeah, you can try sharing your screen now.
Okay, hold on. It's gonna be a process here. Thank you. How do I do it? View options.
If you go to the share button, I just allowed multiple participants to share.
Do I have it?
Yes, so all participants
Oh,
can
I got
share
it.
right now.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm doing that because, yeah, I have to kind of avoid my. Okay, can you see what I see? It should say Youth Development Council, Youth Development Division document.
No, I just see the agenda.
Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing. Anya, do you want to
Oh,
try
there.
sharing now? Okay.
There it is.
You see it?
Yes.
So what, Christina, correct me if I'm wrong, what I think I hear you suggesting is that we redo the guidelines. And a specific that we may have been, or we were not very clear about what it is that we're asking communities to do. So we had all these questions here.
Yep.
Right? We wanted information about local juvenile justice continuum and services, and how COVID and wildfires affected people, so summary of key data and so forth, services, brief description, lead agency, assessment tool, populations to be served. Yeah, so this is the question 6 area, right? The evidence-based practice and cultural appropriateness. So what I think I heard you say, we emphasized the racial and ethnic composition, but we did not give enough attention to LGBTQ plus youth.
Right, the last 2 bullets in that section, when everyone talks about question 6, it's really focusing on the second bullet.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just highlighted what I think. Right. So then, and it's just like, looks like you and I are talking, so I'll just make sure that everybody else has an opportunity to chime in. So if I'm hearing you, we may want to just redo the guidelines. So
No,
instead of giving people an option, like you can either say as you'll continue doing what you've been doing, or put a new plan, just answer those questions. We change those questions, make them clearer, and ask everybody to answer them. And if in some areas people will be repeating the same programming, that's okay, because the questions still need to be answered.
yeah, I'm not advocating that we make everybody redo everything, Anya.
Right.
I think part of it might be coming up with some guidance, like we ended up doing for question 6, doing that for the people, us and other people that are going to be reviewing these plans, so that we are being more consistent with how we're reviewing the plans. So I brought this up because when I was reviewing the redos last spring, several of those counties that I was redoing without prompting added in a bunch of information about how they're serving LGBTQ plus youth. So, but that wasn't what the guidance focused on. The guidance was really, that document that we handed out was really focused on the racial and ethnic bullet on there. So I'm just saying, I think that, I guess what I'm saying is, I agree with not making everybody reinvent the wheel if they plan on doing the same programming, their community supports that. And I think doing an update on some key information, an abbreviated thing, is a great idea. But for those who might need to do a whole new plan, I think we need to be much clearer on the front end with the people who are reviewing. And also, I think there's an opportunity. We aren't releasing these right away. Maybe even soliciting some, and you know, Tori, you might roll your eyes at me for saying this, and it's okay, I understand. But you know, maybe sending out like a Survey Monkey and just saying, okay, what's some helpful feedback about from the last process in terms of how we could improve, and make sure that we're asking you to give us information that really tells the story of what's happening in your community with this funding. You know, I mean, I just from my informal conversations with juvenile directors about this, as this all unfolded over the last, you know, year and a half, I think people have some good ideas, and I think people are moving in a positive direction. So I'm not trying to stir up bad feelings from the past. I think it's been quite a learning process for everybody. So I don't know, those are just my thoughts. And then the other piece is OYA is developing this template of data and information that will be automatically generated for juvenile departments. It seems like we might be able to request that information be attached as part of this little mini update type of thing to not duplicate efforts and have that streamlined data coming from the same source from JJS. That's just another idea that I had about how we could streamline this a bit.
Yeah, that will be super helpful to get that. Do you know if they've created the template finally, or is it still in the draft form?
Tori, I don't know if I missed part of that. I had to come in a few minutes late at our membership meeting, but I thought it was still in draft form, but it's getting close. Is that your understanding, Tori?
Yeah, I don't think it's quite ready yet, but I know they're hoping to get it out soon.
Yeah.
I guess I would
Yeah,
just
go
add
ahead.
to that, you know, I was one of the counties that redid question 6, and I appreciated the guidance that was provided. And I think, you know, my thing is, tell me what information you want to hear, and I'll provide that, you know. And so I think, you know, the extra guidance on question 6 was really helpful to say, okay, here's the things that we are going to be looking at and scoring. Okay, now I can kind of go through and do, because there's lots of things that I didn't put down in question 6. We didn't add any new programming in between the time I turned it in and the time that we resubmitted. So, I mean, it was just how do we want that described in the information that you're seeking. And so I think the more, as Christina had said, how you're going to be scoring those and what you're looking for is important information to be able to provide to the people filling those out. Say, am I hitting those key points to make sure that my programming is in line with what the funding structure is set up to support. So I think that's important. And then the other question, maybe just a question, is, you know, there's a lot of, we don't talk a lot about the socioeconomic status, and in my county, it's not, you know, overly diverse at all. It's, you know, predominantly white, but there's a lot of socioeconomic disadvantages in our communities that that's not really brought out very much in the JCP planning. And so that might be something to think about also addressing as part of that process around, you know, how do we make sure that all kids are getting what they need in our communities.
Mm-hmm.
Totally makes sense.
I would also add, you know, when I was reviewing the redo of the question 6 about diversity, even with some of the guidelines, I found that several of the applicants that I read were not answering it. So I think we need to do something to put more questions to really help guide them in answering the question, because what they were providing, it was information, but it really was not answering the question. So that's one. And then two, under number 6, where it was you had the first bullet points really more about equity, diversity, and the second LGBTQ, a possibility is to break it out, because sometimes what happens is you can conflate the two. I'm going to answer the one and okay, that satisfies the other, but it really doesn't. And so really having it as their standalone questions. One is about ethnic diversity, the other is about gender diversity and roles, etc. So maybe that could be a possibility.
I think that's a really good idea.
Right. So it sounds to me that we may want to do several things. We will look into OYA's template and see if we could either join them or borrow it or steal it and just call it our own or whatever. But the idea is it will be more or less aligned, so they don't look like completely different things to counties. Second, we'll take a closer look at the questions we're asking and the anticipation of answers that we will be getting and how those answers will be looked at by the reviewers. Am I hearing you? So with all of that, you know what's going to happen. I will need committee's help, and Sam has his hand raising. I think Sam is volunteering.
I'm actually going to volunteer my 2 cents. Sorry. As you know, I'm a little outspoken. I think if I heard correctly, the first question you posed was, should the process, you're talking about the process, and you're going to follow questions 2 and questions 3. And I think from what I heard, and I concur with Christina, I think what I heard was the possibility of the application form, perhaps not the process, the form, be amended or revamped to bring clarity, to address the point that Tori was bringing up, like, just tell me what you want. Basically that's what it is. And as a person that I fill out grants, I fill out reports too, like sometimes I ask, just tell me what you want and I'll answer the questions. And I think, and then I totally agree with Adrian. When I read some of the original submissions, some people just ignored question number 6. It was so lacking. And I think yes. I think the answer to your first question, Anya, I think if possible, just revising or reformatting the application or report so that it's clear to the authors or respondents of what we're looking for. I think that'd be great. And then if it's possible for them to just update, because we don't want to just make people do busy work, just for the sake of busy work. That's my stance. And I feel like there's going to be questions number 2 and 3. What, right, Anya? That's just my 2 cents.
No, I completely agree with you. So I just put in the chat the last biennial plan submission guidelines, so you can see that I don't have to share my screen, which is a challenge, the technical challenge for me. And I will also add their question 6 as soon as I find it. But committee members, who would like to join me in the revision work? I think Christina and Sam have already volunteered, and it would be great if Adrian too.
What about Tabidi? He's a very intelligent guy.
Tabidi, would you like to volunteer? The task is to revise the guidelines for the next biennium.
What is the timeline for completion of this?
That would, well, see, this is our second bit. It would, ideally, we should adopt the guidelines at the December meeting of YDC. So between now and December.
From now in December. Oof. How long do you think it will take?
To update, to work on them, maybe a couple of meetings. If people do homework, you know.
So it'd be Sam, Christina, you, and me. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Anya, this Molly, I'm just breaking in to let you know I arrived. I'm so sorry. I had a meeting that got tied up in, and so I'm just here.
No worries. You can still volunteer.
So my curiosity is, I love the team that's formed. Is there any opportunity to maybe have non-juvenile justice subcommittee members kind of join us to kind of give feedback and then bring it back to the juvenile justice subcommittee? I'm just thinking that if we could just expand it just a tiny bit and add a couple of ad hoc members on, that might be really useful to the process.
Well, absolutely. Tori's here. Tori, would you like to volunteer?
I'd be happy to help out.
I wasn't putting, I'm so sorry, Tori, that was not what my intention was. But I also,
Oh, you know where road to hell come from.
But I do think that I would like to reach out to Zan Ojero as well, because I think Zan had some real interest in this, and she's one of our YDC members, even though she's not a participating member of our Juvenile Justice Committee. But I think Zan would be interested in participating and would be a great perspective.
I think it's great. And I also see that Melissa just put Antibody agrees that somebody from other YDC committees like policy, rules, and research, especially research, would be super helpful.
Yeah.
You know, because yeah, I think a challenge, and this is honestly, and I know we're on the record, I'm not trying to asking for sympathy here. This is not that. It's about, I think the more people, the more voices we can hear and more opinions we can address and issues we can solve before the guidelines are distributed, the easier it will be for everybody involved in the process. Yeah. So if there is a will to spend some quality time together in the beginning of the process, I will be super grateful for that. So
I agree. Many hands make light work, because I think at the end, it just increases the whole kind of transparency piece of it. So from a staff perspective, Anya, I know you're going to be helpful. And will Lindsay be able to participate?
So we have Joy, which is great. Joy will certainly help us keep us on track, right, Joy? Sorry, I'm speaking for you.
Welcome back, Joy.
But so she will keep us on track, and I think Lindsay will be as helpful as she can be.
Okay.
And I'm slightly reluctant dedicating her time full time, a lot of time for it, because we've been behind on our visits to law enforcement and court holding facilities and so forth. So I don't know how much time she will have, but you know, again, I think if we agree to do homework and come prepared between meetings, you know, I don't think it will take a ton. Plus, we already have a what you may call a draft. Let's call our this current biennial guidelines as a draft, and then those specific guidances that were shared later on for question 6. So let's look at those documents as drafts. So we're basically looking at some draft documents, and we'll also get a draft from OYA. So it's not that we're starting from scratch. And no joking, we've had some experience with how things can go not so well. So it's not a completely like unknown territory for us.
Yeah. I think you have a good team though, Anya, so far. If we have, I'm not gonna speak on behalf of U2BD because I know that you were reluctant, but Sam and Christina and Tori, and I do think reach out to the other
And
groups.
Adrienne said that she would, right, Adrienne?
Oh, and Adrienne, yes.
I didn't actually, I had, you know,
Sorry, did
I'm
I?
interested, but I don't have the capacity right now, unfortunately.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's very
But we will share with you at the next meeting what has been developed in the process. So so it's Molly, Christina, Sam, Tabiti. Did I twist your arm too?
You know, okay, I just don't want to let you down. And I know I'm just trying to think, you know, how much is this going to require, how much it will require, and I want to be excellent. And so that's why I was trying to decide between ad hoc and actual.
Okay, how about you and Adrienne will be advisors?
Okay.
So when we have like, you will look at a draft before it goes to the committee. Would that
Perfect.
work?
Yeah.
Yes.
And when
You'll
you,
be the advisory team.
okay, and when you send to me from an advisory standpoint, can you outline just some you know concerns that you have, so I can add that to my focus?
Okay,
Would that be
so we will
okay?
share. I think it makes sense. So it's gonna be Molly, Christina, Sam, Tori, and hopefully somebody else from the field. And Melissa will check with YDC, other YDC committee members if they would be interested in joining this work, like Zen or somebody else. And then we'll have a so-called advisory team, so who will take a look at a draft as it develops before it goes to the Juvenile Justice Committee, and certainly before it goes to the YDC for approval. And we will be looking at getting the guidelines, at least like a draft we're comfortable with, done by December YDC meeting. Will that work?
Yes.
Good plan.
Melissa, that sounds good.
Thank you. So we'll be in touch with the volunteers, and Molly, Tori, Christina, if you can think of any other lead JCP agency representative who will be willing to join, you know.
Yes.
Oh, I will just leave it up to you, the invitation bit to you.
Okay.
Okay, that will work. And we will, and Joe and I will set a like approximate dates for us to start looking at things. But at the end, after this meeting, if not right after, because I have to drive to Florence, not Italy, but locally, after Gov meeting, I will send out the draft, let's call them draft documents, the guidelines for the current biennium, the question 6 instructions, and I promised one more, OYA draft, at least the one that I have. And I think that's the latest, at least that they have shared with the planning committee. And then we'll see what we can combine, you know, how we can make it all work. Molly, you're now in charge of the meeting.
Okay. Well, and also, you're great. And as well as we do that, I think it might make some sense. I know they're busy just like the rest of us, but ask either Christine Kirk or Debbie Martin to be on our review team. just because they are also really, really competent at kind of looking through a lens for planning. And so I think we could do some nice crossover there as well with the JCP basics / diversion. So I think that would,
great.
yeah, that would be great. Okay. I'm going to take control of the agenda, but I'm going to turn it back actually to you, Anya. And that's on our compliance monitoring update.
So interestingly enough, things have changed since we put this agenda out.
Okay.
Meaning, the compliance monitoring update is that our guidelines for, actually they're not guidelines even, the compliance monitoring manual that Lindsay and I, with help of Ryan Shantz, who is now with the Center for Coordinated Systems to the States with OJJDP, worked for almost a year. We got it resubmitted, all revisions completed. I'm happy to tell you that it was finally accepted by the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention. So that work has completed. Now, the second stage of that, the acceptance of the compliance monitoring manual was one of the contingencies for us to receive fiscal year 21 funding. So we received the funding, so we got the grant award, which is a plus. And given the amount of money we've received, which is about $600,000, I have a feeling that it means that we're in full compliance with for the previous year. And I'm assuming is because we never got the actual letter that says you're in compliance or you're out of compliance. It's just been a little strange process this year. I'll just leave it at that. But the award is here. The compliance manual has been accepted. So that's a progress, I think. And our fiscal year 22 application is still under review, but we submitted the data, we submitted everything, so that's gonna in the process now. That's pretty much our compliance monitoring update. So good news overall.
Okay, no, that's great news because last week we didn't have that news.
No, see, that's the thing. We didn't have that news after when we sent the agenda out.
Yeah, and at OJDDA last week, we didn't have that news, or a couple weeks ago. So that is great. So for the Juvenile Justice Subcommittee members, I just want to share how much work that was for Lindsay being a new person coming on board, and Anya, because similar to other experiences, really we had put a great manual together and lots of thought and work had gone into it, and then to get it turned around and basically said do a complete rewrite, and we're going to hold up your money until that moment in time. That was a lot of pressure on our staff because some of that money comes through to support us in juvenile justice. And so please share with Lindsay, thank you, because I know it was a lot on her plate.
Well, I will. Thank you, Molly. Thank you.
Anything else about the monitoring update on her plans coming up, or anything we should know, or anything we can help with?
Well, now that honestly, this compliance monitoring manual, along with the submission of the last year compliance data, those two were major things that she was working on. So it's just now that she is starting to do site visits. So we don't have a full plan yet, but we have a system of like, what's the highest risk? And by highest risk is which facility has not been visited in a certain number of years. So once she has that, we will share it. And if any of the committee members would like to join her, she could use some company. But that's something that committee members can do. If you're curious and, inspecting law enforcement facilities, we can arrange that.
So I would encourage, especially new members to our team, to our juvenile justice team, if that's something that interests you. It's a big part of our work, and I think she's doing both virtually and in person, to get out and see some of the facilities across the state, and how we are in compliance with the OJDP Act, and the core competencies are 6 that we need to follow. And so anyway, I would just extend that if anybody is interested in doing site visits to connect up with Anya, and she can connect you up with Lindsay, because it's kind of an easy way to find out if she's going out on a day to kind of coordinate that, and it's not ongoing commitment, but spot here and there kind of commitment.
Thank you, Molly.
Yeah. Okay, so I think the next piece on the agenda is around probation reform and the toolkit that's being sponsored by the Coalition for Juvenile Justice for state advisory groups. And I kind of wanted to talk about this from a perspective of just updating everybody on our role as a state advisory group and the relationship with CJJ. And then we can kind of go through the 3 bullets. But CJJ, Coalition for Juvenile Justice, is a federal it's a nonprofit, nationwide nonprofit that kind of came out of a few years ago when OJDDP kind of quit supporting the state advisory groups in the same way as it had in past years. And so many of the members of SAGs across the United States came together and created the Coalition for Juvenile Justice. And in doing so, they've put several toolkits together. They've put several information packets together. And I get the honor of representing all of you at this national conference that we just came back from in May as a state advisory group. And so I get to have conversations with other states around us, as well as all across the country and our territories and different areas. And wanted to just kind of share what some of the work is going on nationally. And one of the national components is around probation reform. And it's a project that's partnered with several different national philanthropic organizations, as well as the Criminal Justice Coalition. So I just kind of wanted to touch base with this group from the Juvenile Justice Committee and see where everyone's interests around the table is, kind of talking about being a bit of a think tank and engaging some partners, mainly Juvenile Department Directors Association, in some conversations around probation. And so I know it came out in the agenda, and I'm just going to hold a space and see if anybody has any interest. What interests you about the topics and the 3 bullets that are on the agenda, and then see if we can't engage in a conversation. So that's my invitation to join.
Molly, are you talking about having a conversation with the group who's putting this effort forward at CJJ, or are you talking about within Oregon specifically, or both?
Kind of within Oregon, and our role as, because we really are identified for the purposes of the OJDDP Act as the SAG, the State Advisory Group for Oregon. So I know I'm thinking about it in context of the state of Oregon. The toolkit is just what they're sharing with us from CJJ if we wanted to use their toolkit to kind of think through how we might play a role in probation transformation. And I guess I think about it in just the conversation we had around the JCP guidelines and the planning process. And are there anything that we could have a conversation with around whether we use the tool as a best practice, whether that counties could kind of lean on or use as a resource as they're completing their JCP plans. Several of us participated in the Juvenile Directors Conference a couple of weeks ago, and definitely there was lots of conversation there. That's this statewide conference where all the juvenile departments around the state come together, and it's their kind of annual training. And YDC was a partner this year at our Juvenile Directors Association's conference. And then we just participated in a juvenile justice summit put on by the judges. And so it feels like there's a couple of different opportunities to pull together and have a conversation around this. So that really was just opening a conversation on the SAG committee's interest. And it's okay if we're not interested in this. I just wanted to make sure that I'm bringing the national voice back to Oregon and our SAG so that we have the opportunity to have an informed discussion on if we want to use any of the tools that we're receiving from the CJJ. Does that make sense, Christina?
Yeah, no, that does make sense. Thanks. I think Sam has a question in there about Annie Casey, and I know I haven't read this document, Molly, but I'm assuming, I know they're very involved in the Coalition for Juvenile Justice, and I'm assuming that part of this is based on the national work they've been doing, or is that, should I not assume that?
No. So you're right. The Annie Casey Foundation is one of the philanthropic organizations that's participating with the council. It's also the National Council of Juvenile and Family Court Judges is one of the key roles in this. And that's who helped sponsor the Judges Summit, the Juvenile Justice Summit sponsored by OJD last week. And so they're also kind of a part of that piece. And then CJJ is a part. And then I think the other one is the Southern Poverty Law Center.
And Molly, if I may add to this,
Yeah.
few more links that I added to the agenda, and they would connect you with basically an opportunity to participate in the probation transformation reform for free with the help of the National Council for State Governments. In fact, if you're interested, Joy, I hate to ask you to jump from one link to another, but I wonder if that's okay, if you could open
The agenda.
another link. If you could go back to the agenda, I'll probably remember which one it is if I see the name.
Right, so as Anya's having her do that, the other links in here is if you're interested in doing this, yes, thanks, is the coalition is hosting a series of webinars. Is that correct, Anya? Is it webinars?
Right. And it's called Breaking the Rules, Rethinking Condition Setting and so forth. And there's a call for applications from states at the last link. Joy, do you mind opening that? So basically, if we as a committee, as an advisory group are interested, this is where we can join this work along with Coalition for Juvenile Justice and NEK founded, whatever, I always forget the right title, NEK. Through this technical assistance support. To do that, we need to write a letter that we're interested. To decide whether we want to write a letter, they're offering a webinar. I think it's coming up like sometime soon. So it's like two organizations are coordinating this work nationwide, and we could potentially have an opportunity to participate, at least initially not having to make any financial investment, but just considering like, well, might it work for us? And it is true that the same group is working with the Judiciary Department on the, Sam, they kind of stole your name, but it sounds like JDAP, but it's like GDAP. There's an I instead of E.
Juvenile Delinquency Improvement Program
Thank you.
or project.
So anyway, so I think it's going to be an interesting opportunity for the state, at least to consider.
Yes, Anya put it so much better than I was trying. That's what I was trying to get to.
Sorry, I just
Cut to the chase. That's okay.
So Anya, for the letter, do we have to have already counties raising their hands already, or? Because I'm pretty sure Wasco will raise their hand, right? Molly?
Molly has no more bandwidth.
Well, I honestly don't know. Well, I know I heard of this opportunity, and the person who presented this as an opportunity for the states, Stephanie Shaw, I think, she came to the last Coalition for Juvenile Justice meeting. So that's how I know that those two efforts are connected. So on one hand, there's a tool put together by the Coalition for Juvenile Justice for state advisory groups. And then there's a technical assistance opportunity from an organization that partners closely with them. And they will come and they will explain how things work. So I don't know how much of a commitment we need to make today. I think today is, are you interested in general? But since the letter is due by October 14th, doesn't leave us a whole lot of time.
And I think the one from the Council of State Governments, this particular TA is, the two sites are from the larger pool across the nation. And so I think if we sent in an interest letter, we could participate in some of the technical assistance as a state advisory group. We wouldn't be selected as one of the two sites to receive the deep levels, Sam, yeah, Wasco County won't be putting in to do one of the key sites. However, we do have one of the premier probation transformation counties just north of us in Pierce County, Washington. So I think, if we wanted to engage in some conversations and just some learning opportunities, we do have one of the model sites very close to us. So Rafi or Tabiti or Adrian or anybody, kind of, what are your thoughts? Part of me says we have some bandwidth issues.
Yeah, I don't know that I have any thoughts that would be super helpful to contribute to the conversation. I feel like I'm still trying to piece everything together. But I think my general feeling of just everything that's going on, at least with those that I speak to at the county level, is there's a lot happening. So I have no idea. I'm always the first to jump in and say, sure, let's just keep the conversation going. And at the same time, I feel like I'm really hesitant to go one direction or another, just not knowing more information or what this would really mean.
Okay.
Molly?
Yeah, Christina.
I think that obviously that this is the target population for this. It is the kids that are served by county juvenile departments.
Mm-hmm.
I know some kids are on probation with the Oregon Youth Authority, but that's typically not, that's a very small number compared to what goes on around the rest of the state at the county level. It seems like we may have colleagues, and around the state. I don't think all 36 counties would be interested in this, but we might have some colleagues that would be interested. So for example, I'm thinking about just conversations with Starfelty and Lane County. They're really trying to take a look at some of their practices. I know that's has been going on like up in Columbia County. So it's hard to know because we haven't put the feelers out. So this group, as a state advisory group, right, is trying to figure out, hey, would our state benefit from this? I know in my own department, without this, we're doing some of the recommendations in these documents, right? And I know we're not alone. I know other departments are doing various things, but it just feels a little like, as a SAG, we can't speak for the interest of the 36 county juvenile departments. It doesn't mean all 36 have to be involved. It could be like when we did the evidence-based decision-making project with the Center for Juvenile Justice Reform, we weren't able to have all the counties involved in it, right? So I don't know, I guess I'm kind of coming at this like, you're right, we're not going to have the two big jurisdictions that Council of State Government wants to work with and really go deep with, but we might be able to bring a resource of getting information and contacts of and examples of how things are going well in other parts of the country. And as you said, we have Pierce right to the not very far from us. So I don't know, it seems like something that we need to look into, but it feels weird to write a letter when we don't know if we actually have the interest.
So I really like that, Christina. I think maybe one of the things we should do is send this out to all 36 county juvenile directors to the listserv. Highlight that it's a tight turnaround. I think Multnomah County is one of the sites that fed into the data. In fact, I know they did. And so thanks, Sam, for putting in the piece. The Oregon site is Multnomah County. And just maybe what our role as a SAG is. I think Christina brings a really good point, is we don't have to do it. We just need to network and make sure all the counties know they have the option to participate in it. And I think that's probably the better role for us at this moment in time. Does that seem, I see a thumbs up and a wave.
Yeah.
It's making me feel better, like we're doing something.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, I do too. I really like that. Thanks, Christina. Thanks, Adrian.
Christina, what a great comment. Because if you can just get one that's willing,
yes,
then maybe perhaps they create some modeling. This is, yeah.
Well, and a lot of the smaller counties don't have a budget where they can hire a consultant to help them figure things out. So sometimes participating in something like this ends up leading to other opportunities. I mean, in my experience, to get access to that, like what you just mentioned, Molly, about Council of State Governments. So I don't know, it's kind of like, I view part of our role is we have the ability to bring technical assistance and help develop the knowledge base across the state. That is something that we have the ability to do as a SAG. So yeah, I'd hate to see an opportunity as, even if, like you said, if one county says, wow, I was searching for a way to figure this out, this is just what I needed. To me, that's a win.
Can I ask how much the funding is?
I actually don't think it's so much funding as it's the TA that goes along with it. So it's just, they're going to come in and provide you the expertise on how to do it. So it's a TA grant, not a funding. However, what typically happens is you start with a TA grant and then you move into a service grant.
Yeah.
I mean, other than us saying we strongly recommend you consider this opportunity, is our 3-line letter. Please take a look. You know.
You could also, though, offer a letter of support if they needed it to, or if they moved into a different selection. And we could offer that kind of support. And then a request that if they would be willing to name the SAG as one of their collaborative partners. So some of our members could participate in some of the TA sessions. That would be awesome. And then a third thing is that I can do as your chair back to the CJJ is ask if webinars are recorded, and while we wouldn't receive the intensive technical assistance, if some of the webinars could be made available to the larger network. So I think there's 3 little action steps we could do.
This is really important stuff. I mean, it's talking about kids that have already been pulled into the beginning of the deep end. And really, if this is done well and it's done right, can really interrupt that progression and hopefully improve success rates. I know talking to a friend of mine who's a judge in Multnomah County who's been involved in this transformation work in Multnomah, she's pretty gung-ho about the changes she's seeing as somebody sitting on the bench having these cases come before her. So I know a big focus, I haven't read this document, but I know a big focus is on the technical violations, what kids get dragged into court and put into detention for, really honing in on that and the subjectivity and the disruption that those cause. So I mean, there's really some good stuff going on with this.
Thank you, Christina. I would like just to add a couple of points here. Yes, we're not making anybody participate in anything they don't want. This is an opportunity that we're sharing with those who might be interested in. The technical assistance is free. They have also shared quite a bit of their processes in those documents. So even without technical assistance, they outline what it takes, what steps need to be taken, and so forth. And thirdly, to Tiberi's point, we could have funds associated for those purposes. Because remember, I just said that we finally got our fiscal year 21 funding released to us. And that's the first year of our 3-year plan. And our proposal to the feds was that we'll invest in 3 areas: alternatives to detention, community-based services, and delinquency prevention. So this probation reform fits within alternatives to detention program area. So if there is a jurisdiction in Oregon who is truly interested and is willing to go through that process, they can get apply for the technical assistance, and then we could allocate federal funds to support their work in the process. So there is money that can be used for that purpose.
Yeah, I like that. Oh, I should raise my hand. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, you're good. Go for it. I like the conversation.
You know, you know, Anya, this is my God, it does align, right, with a component. The key is how to use that funding without just throwing it out there, just to beg people to get involved and they don't actually execute, right? But how to put it out there in a way that eliminates some of the hurdles to this. So as an alternative to probation, there's work involved in this alternative fashion that requires a little more time than just your own probation, right? If you're going to keep a kid from actually, you know, if you're going to deter them from coming into the system, as Christina pointed out, which is a gateway, right, to hitting, being in this 20%, 10%, you know, recidivism category. What is the labor that's involved and what's the cost of that labor to prevent that? And so I was just reading, I'm just skimming the document, throwing this out because we all won't be in the same space and, you know, pretty soon. And so I'm just trying to throw that idea out to try and think fast in a way to, anyway, you get the point. I'm probably meandering a bit too much.
No, I think that I really appreciate that. The other is that as a SAG, I mean, I think that's exactly where the toolkit will share is as we develop our plan is pathways for funding be aligned with what's the work in the probation reformation work. I think that's very definitely a piece that would make sense as we're looking at writing our next 3-year plan. Others? And you know, the other part is I really appreciate the focus that we've done with the JCP dollars on looking at data. And that's a piece of what is going into probation reformation and really working at that. So we have lots of our elements together in Oregon. And this will be a way that some systems will be able to pull it together. So Sam, and then Tori, is that your hand up or are you clapping? Okay. Okay, as soon as Sam's done, Tori, you're after Sam.
Okay, so I had a process question. Okay, so
Yeah.
with the JCP plans, like if the Juvenile Justice Subcommittee and then the YDC full council felt that this is a focus area or direction that we want to go to, could the JCP plans or application kind of steer people like this is something we'd like you to not implement, but to look at, and if you like, you know, and so forth, encourage? Like what avenues or what mechanisms are in place where the Juvenile Justice Subcommittee and YDC have at its disposal to recommend to counties?
Sure, I'm going to answer that and then I'm going to let Anya. So JCP is actually a tiny bit before this. And it has the statute that defines it, but definitely if it's so it's a little bit prior to this in most cases. But we have our the title dollars that come from OJDP Act that definitely could play into it. And then also, interestingly enough, Sam, there's dollars that come through Department of Education, the Title II dollars, and some of the other dollars that that we could talk about asking. You know, there's some other dollars that potentially could be touch pointed on this. Title 2D, is that it?
Are you
Tori,
talking Homeless McKinney Act?
no, Tori, you know what dollars I'm talking about because you get them.
Oh, you're talking about Title 1D.
Oh yeah, 1D.
Oh, 1D. Okay, yeah, that's neglected and delinquent. Yes. Okay.
So I think we could do, one of our things that we could do as part of this for the next little bit is just look at how many dollars are out there that could touch these, that could be aligned. And while I'm not ever in a situation of telling jurisdictions or counties that they have to, but at least consider some of this as they're looking at things. And the runaway homeless dollars might fit in there too. Tori?
I was just going to mention when you're kind of talking about the SAG, State Advisory Group, and you know, Molly, you had talked about this at our meeting a little bit, just around, we're currently meeting with Representative Crop around developing a group who would have some oversight over juvenile justice issues, kind of an ongoing group that would provide some guidance around those issues and be able to have more state policy kind of decision-making power. So, you know, I just think that fits in well with what you're talking about. And so that, I guess your role as the SAG could potentially be expanded a little bit and maybe, you know, expanded membership to pull in kind of a dual purpose there with things.
Yeah, so do you feel like I need to catch the Juvenile Justice Subcommittee up a little bit? Or Tori, you want to
Oh,
yeah.
sure. So Representative Croft has been meeting with a fairly large, diverse group of folks just around legislative issues that could be coming up during the next session around juvenile justice type issues. And so some of those have to do with, statutory kind of regulations and courts authority, juvenile detention education program funding. I mean, there's a kind of a wide variety of things that we've discussed. But, a couple of folks have brought up the district attorney from Marion County brought up, that there really is no group that really kind of a standing group that oversees juvenile justice policies for the state. And so that is, that conversation has come up a couple times in our work group that's been meeting, just to kind of say, does it make sense that we have something? And I had forgotten about, kind of the SAG, and, Molly had brought that up at our last meeting when we met. And so I'll bring that up. I think we're meeting again here in another week or two, that group. And so, I think that's a good group. You want folks that have some knowledge of juvenile justice and juvenile issues, and people that are familiar with policy and best practices, nationally, to kind of help guide our system. And then just, as things need to change, then really kind of that policy analyst and policy, direction of where Oregon should be going with our juvenile justice system.
Perfect, thank you.
Molly, I'm sorry. Melissa just reminded us that we have members of the public present, and we should give them an opportunity to speak up if they wish to say a few words.
Yeah, thank you, Melissa. I was going to do that. Thank you. And thank you, Anya, because I was just going to share members of the public. If you, we hold kind of this as a slightly more informal, not completely off the free form, but we would love it if you just raise your hand so I can acknowledge you. If you would like to kind of just speak to anything, that would be great. And welcome. So I will go ahead and please raise your hand along the way if you would like to. I want to make sure that it feels inclusive and that we are hearing all voices. Okay. Now I'm going to ask back thoughts of what Tori just shared about with the senator, with Crofts, the senator. Representative Crofts. As I said that out loud, it didn't sound right. Kind of work and our interest in at least being a part of that conversation, if not potentially being stepping into saying, hey, we have some capacity here. We'd like to be a voice for just advising. And again, I don't think we have the capacity without resources, because Anya is really thin, but it feels like in many states, the SAG plays that role for the state. Okay, I'm not going to take silence as not wanting to. I'm taking silence as, wow, that's a lot to think about. Okay. And I'm also taking silence as, oh no, I can't commit to one more thing at this moment in time. Okay. Okay.
Can you reframe what you're asking? I want to make sure.
Oh yeah, so Representative Croft is asking for a group to kind of come along to be kind of an advisory group at the state level around juvenile justice issues and kind of the juvenile justice system. And so they're kind of just thinking that through on what that might look like. And when I had brought it up with Tori at a conversation, as I said, well, in some states, that's what the SAG is. And what we used to have was called the Juvenile Justice Advisory Committee. This takes me back years. Christina was on the Juvenile Justice Advisory Committee. Back when it was a larger group, and it was governor appointed, and it was staffed differently. And so I am by no means saying that our small juvenile justice subcommittee could stand as the statewide advisory for juvenile justice. But what I'm saying is that we need to somehow be connected to that in some way, that we're able to have voice in that, because we're recognized at the federal level as a state advisory group.
So are we being asked to go to additional meetings, or to maybe bring that entity from time to time into this space just to discuss, to specifically focus on pertinent issues that maybe we can get feedback on?
Yes, and I'm not sure the answer to that on what Senator or Representative Proft's vision is. If it is a bigger vision for a bigger ask to look at code revision and look at that, or if we look at as a subcommittee for a piece of it. I guess what I'm just kind of, Tori, you want to help me? Because you've attended those meetings and I have not.
Yeah, I don't think the ask is happening right now. I think it's really kind of bringing to the representatives' attention and to the work group attention that we already have a group, the SAG group, that sits in Oregon already, and it would likely be expanding that to make it bigger, because it would, and again, Molly talked about the resources. I would agree with that. It would be a bigger ask. So I don't know that Molly's asking any commitment at this time. It's more just information of, hey, this might be something that could be coming down the line. It could look different. It might be, if it's governor appointments, there'd probably be additional folks from judiciary and defense attorneys and prosecutors and those kind of things that would be part of that group as well, to really look at kind of the state policy pieces. And then again, if we talk about reforming our juvenile code, then that's a whole nother huge undertaking, right? So I think Molly was just trying to kind of give some information that this group could move into something different, or there might be some opportunities to maybe get involved in a different way than what you are right now.
Yeah.
Does that fit, Molly? But
it does. There's no action that needs to be taken right now.
I think Sam made an excellent point in the comments here about how there needs to be understanding that juvenile justice intersects with so many other organizations and system players. So one of the fears that I have is, we have an adult criminal justice commission, which is great in the state of Oregon. I have a fear about this just getting kind of subsumed into something like that as like a little wing, but that organization doesn't focus specifically on juvenile justice. So I also have a fear about too many siloed parallel universes going on. So I like the idea of putting it out there for consideration to not recreate a new wheel when we might be able to just tweak one that we have. I mean, we've got the Youth Development Division, Youth Development Council. Juvenile justice is a small part of what we should be talking about when we talk, in my opinion, holistically about how we do our best for the children and youth of Oregon. So I just worry about it becoming too criminal justice adult focused. So it's too early to know, because we don't really, as Speedy identified, we don't really have a clear idea yet of what the real vision is. It sounds like it's a bunch of concepts being thrown around, some brainstorming, which is all good. but I think it's important that it's on everybody's radar, because I would hate to see it go in a different direction. And I think Rep. Crofts, he's an attorney who used to represent young people, and then he used to prosecute them. So I think he's got some pretty good life experience, and I think he is intending to help transform the system for better. So I just really hope it, I appreciate the conversation, Molly, of trying to keep this group on the radar. Maybe not exactly the way it's organized but now, but it seems to me this is the right group to look at expanding when we're talking about this, but that's just my opinion.
Yeah, can I echo that, and asking the representative to even come and have a conversation with us about, and that would be all of us sort of standing back, looking, and you know, brushing up on what have you, and have a nuanced conversation around how we might do some different things in this capacity, instead of just so if this is just a checkbox, I don't think we're doing anything, which I'm not saying that that's the case. But if we could ideate together, right? If this is the council, let's ideate together around even if there isn't a plan or a strategic plan or goals, but just some themes. Let's sit together and talk about what that may look like, you know? So I would love that.
So I really like that idea, because our group is small, and I know we're missing lots of voices at our table. And so I know increasing our table would be amazing. So just even having that conversation with Representative Croft to see what his vision is, and to see if there are points that we could sit and ideate on. I think I'm sometimes envious of other states that have, 15, 20 member SAGs that include youth and families, as well as a variety of lived experience, judges, defense, providers, advocates, all of the different kind of perspectives around the table that are then able to have a bigger voice. So I think that's a great idea. Anya, yeah, Christina.
I know you're trying to move on here, but what Tabiti just said, if we could invite, I'm just thinking out loud.
That's what I'm going to ask. That's what I'm going to ask. Exactly. I was headed there, Christina. How, Tori and Anya, is there a way that you could help us? Is that where you're going, Christina, to ask the representative to maybe join us at our November meeting?
Well, I was definitely planning on bringing to his attention the existence of SAG as maybe a starting point for the conversation. And then I'm certainly happy to ask if he would be interested in kind of talking with this group. And I wasn't sure if Tweety had met the Juvenile Justice Group or the YDC, the larger group, of who you felt like.
I think it would be great. I don't want to speak for you, Tweety, but when I look at the list, on the side here of who's a member of the big group, and we have some young people, youth members, I just really think if we could be prepared and maybe have heard from him, what is his vision? Maybe by December he has more clarity around that, and then have people, as you just said, I love that, ideate together. I just think that could be really powerful before this thing goes too far down the road. Is that what you were thinking, Tabiti, or were you thinking about this smaller group?
As a collaborator and a person who believes in ideation, that means you listen to what others suggest. And you've all been around a bit longer than me, some of you. And so I welcome whatever would make this as robust as possible. And so if we could get some framing, and with the caveat, don't be afraid if it's not really clear, or you just think, but share your ideas and some component of, you know, what this would, what we could do. But then also, I'm hoping we leave a space that says nuanced approach 2022 and beyond, that, you know, that we're able to come up with, right? Because we're not just trying to patch, we're trying to be preventative, right? And so if we bring all that energy and outlining to the space, it doesn't have to be complete, you know, except for maybe, yeah. And then I think we can get somewhere. So if you think it should be the entire, YDC, because you're right, there are young people that will be in that space, or maybe this group and select members, you know, or invite members who from the larger group whom are interested to join, you know, this conversation, you know, sharing with them, here's the vision, here's what we want to do. And, yeah, or yeah. Either way.
Okay.
So I will share that with Representative Krupp in the work group, and then I'll ask him if I can have Molly get in touch with him to kind of get something set up, if that would work. Or Anya, do you want me to have you do that, or what would you like?
Molly, and you have my full trust. Just let me know what you need from me.
Okay. So
Okay.
I'll kind of pave the way for Molly to get in touch with him and get something set up.
And Anya, do you know if Brian has had any conversations with him? He's now Representative Krupp is the chair of the House Judiciary Committee. So it seems like he would be somebody that Brian would at least want to get to know.
Well, I do not know the answer to this question, but I will check with Brian when I meet with him. But I have to tell you, we did submit our Senate Bill 267 interim report to Senator Krupp or Representative Krupp last week. Well, not to him directly, but to the judiciary staff. It was you again. But I don't know, Molly, if you noticed, our meeting was supposed to end at 2:30 today. Because we thought that we didn't need 2 hours of a full time. So I appreciate everybody's patience, but I do, if that's okay, I want to say a couple of words about the OJJDP National Training Conference. Is that okay?
Yeah, so what I really want to do is thank everybody for the robust conversation. And I'm not going to take the meeting back over from Anya. I'm going to have her close out with the OJDP National Training.
Thank you. But meanwhile, could we think about when the next meeting will be? Because that's the last thing we need to discuss today.
Is November 7th a holiday?
Is it a holiday?
No.
Yeah, then let's do it November 7th.
Yeah.
Thank you. So the conference, I really appreciate this conversation that we just had about state advisory group responsibilities, what they are and what they are not, and how Youth Development Council can fulfill those responsibilities. The challenge and the opportunity that we have here in Oregon is that our state advisory group is like no other. That being the Youth Development Council, which is de facto a state advisory group, has so much more funding, responsibilities, and policy obligations that they have to deal with, that kind of creates an opportunity to look at juvenile justice from a broader lens and help connect juvenile justice work with all kind of other community-based investments that the Youth Development Division is making. But at the same time, it limits our capacity to deal with juvenile justice issues at the level that a state advisory group needs to or expected to. So with that, it would be wonderful if any of the Juvenile Justice Committee members and or broader Youth Development Council members could consider attending the National Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention training in San Diego, California in December. There will be a special track dedicated to members of state advisory groups, what your responsibilities are, what the expectations of you are, and what changes you could potentially create in your jurisdiction. And by jurisdiction, I mean the state as a whole, as well as locally. So the training is free and the travel expenses will be paid by Youth Development Division using the funding that is specifically provided for this purpose by the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention. So please consider, I don't have an agenda. It has not been finalized yet because the administrator has not signed off on it. All we know that it will be during that time, December 13th through 15th. I don't think I need to advertise San Diego in December too much for you. I'm not gonna go overboard with that. It's a nice place to be in December. And there will be training specific to your respective roles as state advisory group members. So if you feel like it's something that you might want to consider doing, Melissa is the main person in that, right? Melissa, you still there?
I am still here. Thank you.
Great. So so that's what I wanted to say. But yes, it has been it's an opportunity and it's a challenge to be a member of a state advisory group that has so many responsibilities beyond what a state advisory group would have in a different state.
I think it's worth it. I would encourage anybody who can look at those dates, and even though the agenda is not out, I will tell you they set really good agendas and have lots of meaningful information. And it is a great way to connect across the United States, so and beyond all of our territories. So I would encourage anybody who could to participate December 13th through the 15th. And it's on the West Coast, which makes it really easy for travel. No jet lag. Okay, please reach out to Anya and I'll see everybody on November 7th.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Molly.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hey, Melissa, can you stay on?
See.